And to all my loyal followers, you'll already know this, but to anyone new tuning in, the show is interactive. We do have a studio line and a WhatsApp SMS, and you can also chat with us on Facebook through Ramadan FM. And I'm going to play one of these fancy buttons that we have on one of our stream decks, so bear with me.
Call in on our studio number, which is 0116 4822 086, or text in at 077 488
Well, I hope that was slow enough for all of you to jot the numbers down. But if not, like I said, you could chat with us through Facebook on Ramadan FM. Now, as always, I do like to start the show with a bit of housekeeping. I do like to thank the team at Ramadan Radio, without whom the show would not be possible. I'd like to thank the guests as well as all the listeners and viewers who make it exciting for me to keep coming back every month and doing these shows. And without further ado, I am now going to introduce you to our this month's show, this month's guest, Sanaa Khan. Now, Sanaa, who I've not had the pleasure of meeting in person, but we have been communicating via text message quite a lot recently, is a dedicated advocate for women's empowerment. Now, that's quite a broad title, so we are going to take that apart, hopefully, in this show to see exactly what it is that she does, how she does it, and any challenges that she faces. So, assalamu alaikum, Sanaa.
Walaikum salam.
Thank you very much for agreeing to be part of this show. Sanaa did try to come into the studio, but she does live quite a distance away, so she has joined us kindly by Zoom and has taken her time in the evening to do this. So thank you very much for that, Sanaa.
No worries, thank you for having me.
So that, well, I already know who you are and what it is that you do, but for the purposes of our listeners and our viewers, could you kindly give us a summary as to what it is that's brought you on our show today?
Yeah, so I do quite a few things. I like to keep myself busy. One element of that is I'm into martial arts. So growing up, I did kickboxing, got my black belt when I was 18, and then used that skill and the ability to teach others, and kind of went more towards teaching women specifically. So I teach ladies only boxing classes, self-defense classes, and that over time kind of evolved into me running retreats for women as well. So I take groups of women to different locations, usually somewhere in nature, in the mountains, and we do yoga. So I'm also a yoga instructor. We kind of spend time in nature and just really help women to prioritize themselves and nurture themselves. Often as women, we tend to put everybody else first and then maybe think of ourselves right at the end. So everything that I do is about building women's skills in terms of looking after themselves, defending themselves, and really just looking after health and well-being, and seeing that as something that's a huge priority for them.
Sounds like amazing. I mean, you mentioned nature.
Yeah.
Nature's not really one for me, unfortunately. I mean, I wouldn't mind. You know, I've heard about all of these glampings and campings and so on. But what you've said in terms of the yoga in the nature and that does actually sound quite peaceful and serene. We'll talk a bit more about that a little bit later. What I want to know is, what was it that you actually wanted to be when you were growing up?
When I was growing up, I had no idea, if I'm being completely honest. I never had a set goal of being a doctor or being someone, you know, a teacher or whatever that might have been. I never had a career aspiration. So I guess for me, I was always a little bit confused growing up as to what route I would take. And I guess for me, I've always followed like my passions and my interests and my hobbies, and that's led me down the route I've gone down today. But aside from the things I've mentioned there around the boxing and the retreats, I do also have a full-time job. So I do work at a bank as a health and wellbeing project manager. So alongside working full-time, I managed to fit these other kind of passion projects in along the side.
Sounds like you've got a really busy plate, to be honest.
Yeah.
Well done, hats off to you on that one. To be honest, you sound a lot like me, always constantly keeping yourself busy, you know, making sure that you can give back as much as you can, because sometimes nowadays it is difficult to to not only give back, but also to be there for other people as well, especially the people who need it. And sometimes we can take advantage of the fact that we have the capabilities of getting through day by day without the support of other people. But actually, every now and then, we need that support as well, and so do others. So hats off to you on that one. Now, quite interested to know a little bit more about the martial arts. I mean, martial arts in itself is a difficult area, and certainly one for women as well, because you don't often see, well, when I was growing up, it was completely unheard of that women would be into martial arts, you know, whether that was parents or society and so on. I'm assuming you're a lot younger than I am, Sanaa. You look a lot younger than me. So the mentality for when you were growing up could be a little bit different, but talk to us a little bit more about martial arts. How did you get into that?
Yeah, so when I was 14, I was just your standard lazy teenager. I used to come home from school, watch Disney Channel, not really do too much in terms of anything outside of like studies. And my parents were really keen, specifically my dad actually was very keen for me to go out and try different sports and learn different skills, mostly for it to look good on my CV for when I apply for jobs in the future. It looks good to say, you know, you've done this, you've done that, but actually also for me to learn how to defend myself as a woman. And so we tried a few different sports, and kickboxing was the one that I settled on, that I really loved and enjoyed and could see myself doing longer term. And so for me, I always wanted to find that one thing that was my thing that I was good at, and it took me a while to get there. But once I found kickboxing, that was it. Like I was hooked. I was obsessed with going every week. I wanted to go through all the gradings and get my belts, and I never missed a grading. And then I got to the point where I was able to instruct other people, and it just taught me a lot about myself. It taught me discipline, confidence. I was quite shy growing up, and that really helped me to kind of come out of my shell. And for me, having to instruct people at the age of 15, 16, and I'm leading a class full of grown men and women, that was like a huge kind of confidence builder for me, and something that I just absolutely loved.
So, correct me if I'm wrong here. You said you were leading at the age of 15. That's quite young to be leading a class of grown-ups.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think for me, one thing I learned through kickboxing is the ability to not see hierarchy, and the perception that you have around, because somebody's older, it means that they have, you know, more experience, or and they might do in different fields. But when it came to being in that kickboxing gym, I was a more senior belt than them, and so they were learning from me. And so I think it taught me that everybody, no matter how old they are, no matter what background they're from, no matter what country they're from, you know, anything to do with their background or their heritage or their age or their gender, it doesn't matter, because everybody can teach everybody else something. And I think for me, I've taken that throughout life. So like working in a big bank, you know, I'll talk to the CEO of the company the same way as I will talk to the cleaners that are, you know, sweeping the floors. Like I do not care for hierarchy and for that mentality, because I've seen how everybody in life can provide and bring benefit in their own way, in their own capacity.
Absolutely. I mean, that's something that Islam always teaches as well, not to have that hierarchy. I mean, the level of respect is different. So when you've got elders and you've got, you know, uncles, aunties, parents and so on, that's different. You know, you have to have that respect. But when it comes to knowledge-wise and everything, just because someone's got, let's say, a master's compared to someone who's got a PhD, yes, okay, you respect the person who's got the master's and the PhD for the knowledge, but actually those people should not look down on the people who don't have that level of certification, because it's a grade at the end of the day. Some people are good at exams, some people are not. And that's something Islam teaches us as well, you know, not to have that hierarchy in that sense. Everyone should be treated equal, shall we say, or everyone should be treated in accordance with their personality. So if someone's more sensitive, then you approach them a bit more differently than you would someone who's like me, who's more open, who's confident, who's not shy, and, you know, so on, and all of that. So that's quite impressive. So now that's very, very impressive. So let's link your martial arts down to society. And I promise there is a method to my madness as to where we'll get to when I ask these questions. But let's talk about your martial arts. And I mean, it's all transferable skills at the end of the day. And for those who are listening and watching, especially the youngsters out there, when I talk about transferable skills, that's a skill acquired, where you learn from one place. That could be a job, that could be a sports, that could be something that you've just picked up. And then you take that into your next, let's call it a project or next stage in your life. So, for example, I ride a motorbike, right? Now, a lot of people would say, well, how are you going to use your motorbike skills in the world of my field, which is the legal world, right? I'm a solicitor. But actually, motorbiking teaches me a lot of discipline, because I'm really short. I'm 4'11", and I'm constantly challenging. It's a challenge to just keeping my bike upright, especially when the bike's really high. But it teaches you a kind of discipline, patience, and so on, just like namaz can, just like Islam can, and so on. But all of those skills you then take into the legal field, where you have patience with your clients. You've got no choice but to have that patience. But also it teaches you how to overcome your challenges and so on. So that's what I mean by transferable skills. So let's talk about the skills that you picked up in martial arts, right? Now, of course, you said that your father was quite supportive. And in our culture, that's really, really important, especially for the youngsters nowadays, having supportive families and so on. How was your parents when it came to, so you're doing your martial arts, then you're in high school by now. Did you ever feel that what you were doing in martial arts ever interfered with our religion or with what society was saying? Did you basically get any challenges from your family or friends or your community?
For me personally, I didn't. I actually think that the martial arts added a lot of value to the other areas of my life. I think for me, in high school, as I said, I was quite shy and I was quite introverted, and I think that helped me to come out of my shell and be more extroverted and more confident to speak, to just speak and communicate and collaborate and create more friends. And I think for me, going into the working world, I took so much from the kickboxing into that, in terms of the skills, so the discipline, the motivation, the ability to see something not just for being in the moment but for the long term. So for example, when I started kickboxing, I was on a white belt and my aspiration was a black belt, so I had like set goals in order to achieve that black belt. I had to go through the other gradings, I had to learn how to instruct, I had to learn how to spar. So there's so many elements that I had to build up towards achieving the end goal. And I think from my career perspective as well, there's always been like that end goal in terms of where I want to get to, and me having that ability to break things down into small achievable chunks to get to that end goal, which can feel overwhelming. I took that from my martial arts experience, and I do try to use that now, kind of going into anything that I do and I'm setting a goal and it feels overwhelming. I try to think back to that as my analogy and my kind of basis.
That's, wow. I'm actually lost for words right now, because I'm trying to picture a really young Sanaa, trying to, leading a class of grown-ups, which is what's going through my mind at the moment, because it's not something that you often see, Muslim, Asian, a young girl, and young at that, achieve so much at such a short age. And it's quite inspiring in that. So I'm going to overcome my fangirling moment and I'll go on to the next question. So we've talked about your martial arts, we talked about your challenges and how you overcame this, and you've explained about the support system that you had. Let's talk about your work. So you do full-time health and well-being manager in a bank, is that correct?
Yeah.
So just explain to us very quickly what it is that you actually do. I mean, I've got a pretty good idea, but for our listeners, if you can just explain what it is that you do.
Yeah, so the company I work for, there's 65,000 colleagues working there. And so of those colleagues, health and wellbeing is a huge priority in terms of how people are able to show up at work and bring their full self to work in terms of their physical health and also any like mental health challenges that they might be having. So if a colleague had a specific health query and they needed to submit that through the organisation, then I work directly with some of our suppliers in order to kind of help with that colleague journey. So we want to make sure that that colleague journey is as seamless as possible, to make sure that if somebody's already struggling, that the actual process for them to submit a referral isn't going to be making that even more difficult and more of a painful process. So it's all about making the process as seamless as possible. And I'm currently working on some kind of wellbeing roadshows across all of our key sites across the UK, to showcase health and wellbeing across the organisation, and seeing how it ties in with all of the other kind of networks that we have as a group, and really showing colleagues that the benefits and the services that we provide in terms of the health and wellbeing, they're accessible, and there's so many of them. So it's showcasing that, and kind of working on projects that will help to do that.
Fantastic. So that kind of goes hand in hand, almost as if what you're already doing with the women as well, where you take them on your yoga retreats and so on. So you've kind of found a role that helps you, juggle a bit of the both, isn't it? Because you mentioned the transferable skills. So you take what you learn from your retreats, your yoga, into your health and wealth, and then from that you take it to the other end. Okay, so let's talk about the women empowerment. Okay, so we know quite a bit about your martial arts and so on, and where does yoga come in? That's what I want to know, because you got yoga, which is from what I've seen, I've never done it. It's like chalk and cheese. You've got your aggressive, well, not aggressive, but you got like a defense sport here, right? Yeah. And then you got your more peaceful, calm chalk and cheese. How did that come about?
There's a reason behind it. So when I did my black belt grading when I was 18, during the grading, for some reason or another, I experienced a panic attack, and I'd never actually had anything like that happen to me before. And so I thought I was having a heart attack, I thought I was having an asthma attack, I thought I was going to stop breathing. I had no idea what was happening to my body. And I realized afterwards, when I reflected, and my coach helped me through it, and he'd had similar experiences, and it was fine at the end. I managed to get my black belt by the end of it. But after reflecting on that moment, I realized that throughout my whole time exercising and going to the gym, I trained my body, but I'd never trained my mind. And I thought, that's so interesting that I felt so out of control over something that took over my body, but actually that was probably something that was to do with what was happening in my mind. And I thought, there's something here that I'm missing around that mind-body alignment. And yoga for me was the thing that I found to kind of bridge that gap and help me understand my mind more. So what I did was, because it's me, I just go into the deep end with things. I didn't bother to try and do too many yoga classes. I just went to Thailand for a month on my own when I was 19 or 20. And I just signed up for a yoga teacher training qualification. So I went to Thailand to learn how to do yoga for myself, but also whilst I was doing that, I was learning how to teach yoga to other people. So I came back from there and then set up my own business specifically for women, to help them with the similar sort of challenges that I'd had around understanding my mind and my body, connecting my breath to my movements, and all of that sort of stuff, to really start to understand actually slowing down is just as important as the other things that I like to do, which is tended to be speeding up, which was through the martial arts. So I think throughout my life, I've been on a bit of a journey of trying to find that balance of fast and slow, and really seeking to understand what is happening in my body and in my mind. Wow. So that's where the yoga came in.
Now it makes a lot of sense, because when you mentioned martial arts and then yoga at the start, I was like, well, hold up, let's backtrack a little bit. They are so far apart from one another. But actually, now that you've explained it, it makes a lot of sense. So thank you for opening up on that one. Thailand, you mentioned Thailand for a month at the age of 18, 19. Yeah. This just gets better and better.
It was unbelievable, honestly. The first time I ever solo traveled, and it was the most amazing experience. And actually what I found was, because I'd done kickboxing for so many years, a huge part of that is stretching and flexibility. So I quite naturally fit into yoga as a sport because of that flexibility that I already had. So for me, it was more learning about the history of it and actually understanding the breath work and the meditation side of things. That's where I gained a lot of knowledge and kind of benefit.
Interesting. Okay, that sounds good. So, Thailand, you were there for a month at the age of 18 or 19, you said.
Yeah.
And I suppose what you learnt on that trip as well has given you the experience that you needed in order to be able to run your business and give
Yeah.
as much as you can. So, let's talk about the business. So, you've gone from martial arts, you've gone to yoga, you've now gone to Thailand for a month, you've come back. Where does the idea of the business come into play?
So when I came back a few months later, COVID happened.
Okay, so it's
So I
fairly
came back,
recent then.
yeah, I came back in November 2019, and like December, January 2020 is when obviously lockdowns happened and we weren't able to go anywhere. So I had to move my ideas that I had for face-to-face sessions online. And so at this point, I was already qualified as a personal trainer. And so I set up some online boot camps. So the business was called SK Fitness, it's just my initials. And I set up some online boot camps throughout lockdown to help women stay active throughout the period of lockdown. We would do challenges. I would put together nutrition packs, recipes. We would have, weekly calls, and we would just do everything via Zoom. So I'd be stood in my living room shouting to the phone. My mum used to get very annoyed with me. She's like, "Can you turn the music down? Can you stop shouting at your phone?" But by the end of it, the ladies that joined the session, a lot of them said that those sessions were what got them through lockdown, and their mental health and their physical health was just like they massively appreciated it from those two elements, because they could see themselves going down a different route had they not had that to keep them grounded, keep them committed, keep them like held accountable. And with those sessions, it was just like £20 a month. Like I wasn't doing it for the money. It was more just to get people feeling good and active and moving. And actually, to students, I would offer it out for free. If somebody was struggling financially, it was free. So there was lots of ways that people could still join and be involved in it. But yeah, it was specifically for women. And then as we started to come out of lockdown, I started doing face-to-face boxing classes in my local gym and face-to-face yoga classes, and then got asked to be involved with a retreat company who run retreats all around the world, and kind of got asked to teach yoga on those retreats and also lead the retreats as well. So take them on excursions, take them for hikes, visit some of the historical sites of the country that we were in. And so through the retreat work with that company, I then set up my own retreat company to facilitate and lead my own retreats, as well as working with that company as well. So over time, things have just evolved. I've kind of built a really good network of women around me that help me, that support me, that encourage me to keep going with these ideas, and the value and the benefit that I see through the women that I've helped is my driving force and my motivation to keep going and keep doing this sort of work.
Sounds like an absolute amazing time. Learning a lot from each of your roles, but also evolving. You mentioned that word evolving, and that's quite key.
Mm.
So you're not one of those that is happily just continuing. You want to constantly do more, and that's absolutely fantastic. So you mentioned quite a few times that it was female only, and I think that's where your passion comes in about helping the other women. So now I'm going to connect it back to what we started off with in terms of the women's empowerment bit. So help me understand that a little bit more. So I understand you've got your martial arts, you've got your yoga, you've got your retreats, and you're helping these women. Now, what, if you're allowed to share, I take it these women are people who maybe work, maybe don't work. Is it people who have been born and brought up here, or does it tend to be people who have come from abroad? Help me understand a little bit more as to where the women empowerment comes in.
Yeah, the demographic is so varied. I've worked with women as young as 5 years old. In terms of my boxing class, I've had a 5-year-old attend.
Wow.
And then in terms of like the retreats, we've had as young as 16, 18, we've had as old as in their 60s. Like it's so vast, and all kinds of religions, ethnicities, countries. So some from the UK, some from the Middle East, some from the Netherlands, from America, from Canada, like absolutely everywhere and anywhere. And I think that's the beauty of the work that we're doing with the retreats and with the classes, is it's so inclusive, and it's there for everyone, and all you need to have a need for and a want for is self-prioritization. And I think that's what draws people into these sorts of things. And it tends to be women who want to travel, but they don't feel safe enough to perhaps travel alone, or they want to connect more with women that are like-minded, and in their area, in their community, they are maybe a minority, and they don't have that support system, they don't have that community, they can't just go down the road and resonate with their neighbours the way that I might be able to do so, because where they live is the demographic is just not, they don't see that representation of their own people. And so it's often women come together to find each other, and so you see like lifelong friendships being built, a real sisterhood being built through this sort of work, and through these sort of retreats. And sometimes, you know, some of these women have been through really traumatic events, they've lost children, they've had divorces, they're at, you know, difficult periods of their life, and I think it's for them to like work through and use that time to really reflect and take that time for themselves, as well as connecting with themselves. It's not just connecting with each other, but actually connecting with themselves and understanding and resetting and, you know, reframing their intentions to then leave the retreat and, you know, and go about their life perhaps in a different way.
Understandable. There is that, isn't there? Because there's not that many women who do travel solo, and those who want to probably can't. Absolutely. So just a reminder to all of our listeners and viewers out there, you tune into Ramadan FM, Breaking Stereotypes, with your host, Zainab Zaeem. We have the wonderful and very jaw-dropping, inspiring guest, Sanaa Khan, who is a advocate for women's empowerment through various activities, including her business where she does retreats and yoga, and she has a black belt in martial arts. So just a reminder to the listeners, the show is interactive. So if you do have a burning question, then please do either call in or text or WhatsApp, because now we're in the day and age of advanced technology, and you know, people tend to WhatsApp, except my parents. And also we've got chat through Facebook. And my listeners do know I don't do shout outs, and I've done them very, very rarely. But I've been backed into a corner on this show, so apologies, Sanaa. But I have to do a shout out to my family, which is my brothers, Zubair, Zunid, Zach, or Zakir, should I say, and my mum and dad. So if any of my brothers did tune in to listen to their wonderful sister's voice, and you have a comment to make, then do post that or send that. But whatever you do, don't WhatsApp it to me, because I'm not reading that out loud. So here goes.
Call in on our studio number, which is 0116 4822 086, or text in at 077 488
You know, Sana, I'm like a little child. Ever since my producer introduced these buttons to me, I just like clicking them. So, yes, the show is interactive, people. We do have 16 minutes left for the show to end. So if you do have any questions for Sanaa, then please do post them or do call in. So, Sanaa, thank you very much for the first half of the show in giving us a rundown of what it is that you do. Now, in my mind, I've got a picture of you running your business with taking all of these women on retreats, some people who are, you know, really looking for that connection with other women, some people who are looking to just escape the realities of life. Some are harsh, some are easy for most people, right? So I'm literally picturing you abroad somewhere, right, doing these yoga retreats and so on. How does, and the reason why I keep coming back to this question is I've seen it a lot in mostly everything that either I do or people that I know do. They don't do things because what's my neighbor going to say? What's my family going to say? What's the community going to say? Now, you're a young woman running a business, traveling solo, but you're traveling and taking other women as well for their betterment. Have you faced, or has your business faced any challenges in that sense?
In sense of being
A Muslim female woman traveling abroad, doing these retreats with other solo women. If you haven't, then that's absolutely fine. That's brilliant.
to be completely honest, like alhamdulillah, I have been very lucky, and I think a lot of women of my age, of my ethnicity, I'm Pakistani. I do believe that they wouldn't be able to do what I do. And I have friends who are surprised at the fact that I am able to, and my parents allow me to go and travel and, do these amazing things. And I am just genuinely blessed to have parents that are very, very supportive of everything that I do, and have actually not just been supportive, but encouraged me and actually stirred me into the direction that they have, that has led me to where I am today. So I think for me, I I haven't faced those challenges, but I am very aware that those challenges do exist and other people do face into them, and it's difficult. And I think sometimes that perhaps comes with, like, cultural barriers, and being a woman, obviously there's certain things that women culturally can and can't do. And I think that that's something that, as I said, I've actually not faced into, but I'm very aware that other women do. I've had girls come to my boxing classes telling me that they can't tell their family, they can't tell their dad or their brothers that they're at boxing class, even though it's women's only, because of that stigma surrounded by boxing being a very male orientated, masculine sort of sport. And why would a woman need to know that? So I have had experiences of other women come to me with their challenges, but for me personally, I've not actually faced into them.
Well, you know what? That really warms my heart to know that. And actually, you're probably one of the first few that I've come across who's got that huge support system and that network. And, I just hope that our children, and I say our children because, like I said earlier, you look a lot younger than I am, Sanaa. I am in my 40s. And something I always encourage my children is to just fly, do what you can. And what I always say to them is, as long as it's within the bounds and within the bounds of Islam and within the rules of the land of the law that you live in, then you can do absolutely anything you want. And actually, I am going to mention my daughter here. She does not like it very much, but she's a very sassy girl. Very, very sassy. And if you ever meet my daughter, you will understand where I am coming from. But she goes to me a couple of weeks ago, because I've got this image of her being this, awesome, as youngsters say, this G, this woman who's a G or a Don or whatever they say. And I really wanted her to do, defense, sports, martial arts, anything that would, her brother really wanted her to do it, her eldest brother. And her eldest brother actually took her, he used to dedicate, so my eldest son, Amrza, used to dedicate his Saturdays and take her to kickboxing and stuff like that. But she is 15 at the moment, so she was about 13 when this was happening. So she was a bit lazy, shall we say. So she didn't really follow through on her martial arts and so on. And then she tried badminton and that didn't work out, and so on. But I've got this image of her being this, awesome young woman, martial arts. Everyone knows this. I want her to learn how to fly planes. I want her to have a private license. And the only reason being is I don't want the sky to be her limit. So she can do basically anything she wants to, as long as it's within the land of the law and within the bounds of Islam. So she said to me a couple of weeks ago, she goes to me, "Mum, you're making it very hard to be your daughter." And I said, "Explain." She goes, "Well, first of all, it doesn't matter what I do, because even if I get a PhD, people are going to still say to me, well, your mum did this and your mum did that and you've only got this." And I said, "Look, Mahadi, at the end of the day, you got to pave your way, right? You got to pave your way. You got to do what you want. But when I say you do what you want, I'm still a brown parent. At the end of the day, I still want you to get that private pilot's license. I don't really care what she does in her career. She could choose a career. She could do whatever she wants. but she has to get that private pilot's license for me because I want her, on a weekend or annual leave from work, whatever, to just hire that plane, jump in, and off she goes to a different country, not having to worry about, airline tickets and, all of those things that parents right now we have to worry about because we don't have that license. But I could jump on my motorbike, you see, when the weather permits, or sometimes I go out in the cold and in the rain. I'll jump on my motorbike and I'll take it for a spin, even if it's just 2 or 3 minutes down the road. And if I'm lucky enough and I get decent weather or my friends are out, we'll go on a bit of a longer ride. And I can get to do that because I've got the means to do so, right? So I always say to my children, you be what you want to be, but having that support system, that network is really, really important. It's quite key. So surround yourself with those type of people who are going to hold you up rather than bring you down. And of course, we can't choose our family. And as much as I love my family to bits, they've been there when I've needed them. But we live so far apart that my support system is not there. They're up north, I'm down south. So that support system is not there. But I'm blessed with, so many friends and families, aunties and stuff who give me that support system. And when sometimes I doubt myself, like I'm sure, there might have come a time in your life, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sanaa, where there's a bit of doubt that's crept in. Can you do it? Can you not? I'm actually quite guilty of that. I do a lot of doubting on myself because I don't want any backlash to come on my children. And every time I speak to my elders, they'll be like, no, Islam doesn't say, no, you can't not do this. Of course you can. There's nothing wrong with it as long as you do X, Y, and Z. And that gives me that little booster to say, actually, it's society who are going to frown upon it, but not the religion. And that's all I'm worried about, as long as it's not the religion. So I've done a bit of a monologue there. So apologies for taking the shine away from you there. So now I am a bit of a chatterbox. And I don't know if any of my listeners have picked up on that, but I am a bit of a chatterbox. But whilst we've got some time, do you have any tips for any of our listeners or viewers that can help them overcome any fears that they have or lack of confidence or anything?
It's a good question. Tips to overcome fears.
Maybe I should have asked you that before I went on my bit of monologue, and then you could have had time to think about it. I do apologize.
No, not at all. I think, do you know what it is? Find the things that you enjoy. And when you have passion and when you have something that gives you purpose, and you actually understand what that purpose is, first of all, to get to that, then the confidence will come because you care so much about it that you'll have no choice other than to show that confidence through that will shine through that passion. If that makes sense. So for me, it's like any work I've ever done, for me, my purpose is ultimately to please Allah. Like that's always the ultimate purpose. But how can I achieve that? Okay, well, I can help people. I can help women. I can develop their skills. I can use my skills and use my experiences to help other people. And ultimately, I would hope that does please Allah. So for me, it's find your purpose, find your passion pieces, find your passion projects, and just throw yourself into them. And I think the confidence naturally will come over time once you find that. I think it's very difficult to be confident about something or show confidence that with things that you're just not interested in. So if your parents are forcing you to be a doctor and you're really not interested in that, then you're not gonna be your true self. You're not gonna be able to bring your full self into that capacity. But I think if you're really going after what you enjoy and what you love and what you thrive and what you see yourself being successful in, then I think you will be able to overcome any challenges that you face because you care so much about it, because of that passion will drive you rather than money or anything else driving that.
Absolutely, I agree with you. What I say to people, so when people see my height, I am quite short. I'm 4'11", and I own my height. I'm damn proud of it. I do say to people that what I lack in my height, I make up for in my tenacity, in my passion, and it comes out when I'm mentoring the students in the legal field and other places and all the volunteering stuff that I do. My passion comes out, but that's because I love what I do. I love giving back. I don't want anyone to be in the same situation. So we've got some time, so I'm going to put a few questions to you. We've got a final few. Is it fair to say that the people who have been coming on your retreats with you, utilizing your skills to improve their life, their health, mind being, I take it you probably would have had some introverts there, right?
100%. Yeah.
Do you feel that they've been able to make good use of whatever it is that you've taken them on? Have they then been able to open up and make changes in their life?
Absolutely. For me, whether you're introverted or extroverted, what is important in those environments is the environment that is being created beforehand. So in the run up to the retreat, and also the first day, the first few hours of the retreat are crucial for firstly creating psychological safety so that people feel like they can be their full self, they can be vulnerable, they can be whoever they want to be, they can show up as their true self. I think that's very important for us to set that tone from the beginning. I think the second thing is for it to be very clear what the intentions of the retreat are and what each individual person's intention is. And we talk about that openly. We'll go through, we'll share our intentions as the retreat leaders, and people will openly share their personal intentions of what they're looking to gain from the retreat. And whether that is, some people, often we do dhikr circles. Sometimes we have a lot of Muslim people on our retreat. So a lot of them, want to get close to Allah. They want to be more attentive in their prayer. They want to connect and find more sisters. And whatever that intention is, setting that right from the beginning is going to help that introvert or the extrovert to really bring their true self to that retreat and gain whatever it is that they look to gain from it. And I think the connections that we build in such a short space of time are because of those foundational elements that we provide that are so fundamental to a successful retreat and to people getting the full benefit and the outcomes of them. So I think as long as we're creating that right foundation and that right environment, then you can only thrive in that environment that we're creating. I think foundations are very important for anything to then be able to build on that.
Fantastic. I'm actually quite glad that you mentioned dhikr, because one of the questions I was going to ask is, I'm assuming that all the retreat leaders as well are female as well, because you mentioned it quite a bit that it's female led. Let's talk about safety then, because I'm hopeful that there's a few people who have tuned in live right now, either on the radio or through Facebook or YouTube. But either way, this show will then turn into a podcast, which will then be uploaded onto Spotify and will remain on social media. So I'm hopeful that women tuning in are listening to you, listening to me, and taking on board what you are saying and what you can do for them, and might want to decide coming with you or at least getting in touch. But one of the elements they might be thinking of is safety, right? So can we cover that in terms of, you're all women. I mean, you are literally probably the only one I'd want on a solo trip with me anyway, with a black belt in martial arts. Who am I kidding on that one? But let's talk about the safety for women. Can you give us just a bit of information as to that?
Yeah, so with the retreats, from the minute you arrive at the retreat centre, and you mentioned earlier around spending time in nature, so we don't camp and we don't even glamp, we stay in nice accommodation.
Okay.
We have a private villa or a private cottage, and it's a good accommodation. So when you've come out from being outdoors, you've got somewhere nice and warm to go back into. But yeah, in terms of the safety, the minute you're at the retreat centre to the minute that you're leaving, we are there, we're present, we've got everything covered. Everything is very safe. The tours we go on, we have tour guides, we have people that speak the language of the area. We often, for example, if we're in Spain, one of the retreat leaders will often be able to speak Spanish. If we're in Morocco, my retreat leader when I was in Morocco was Moroccan, and she could speak the language. So there is a huge obviously the trust in us to provide that safety, and that absolutely is a huge element to it, and a massive priority. So yeah, I would say it's very safe to attend the retreats, and we're always together. There's never a moment where anybody needs to be alone. So yeah, absolutely, safety is a huge priority, and definitely something we take seriously.
I'm glad you mentioned the villas and so on, because one of my questions next, I was actually thinking when you said nature, I was thinking camping and glamping.
No, walks and hikes, but we don't actually sleep under a rock.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned that. I might actually look into coming on one of these retreats, to be honest. Yeah. But so, in a nutshell, then, these retreats does not compromise on Islam at all. You pray your namaz, you do your dhikr, you remember Allah when when you need to, or when you have to, or when you're doing so and so on. So there's no compromises when it comes to the religion, but at the same time, you're making good use of your time as well. So actually, you're not doing anything. And this is what the message I'm trying to get out is for those who are listening, you know, you can do these retreats, meet other women, and look after yourself. And you mentioned something really, really important at the start, and I can't stress that enough. Women have an innate nature. Well, it's nature, isn't it? It's innate, where they put themselves on a total back burner.
Yeah.
And it's always about everybody but themselves, right?
Yeah.
Everybody but themselves. Whether they are a daughter, whether they are a mother, a grandmother, a wife, doesn't matter. Women have this innate nature about them that they just put themselves back. But if you ever come to a point where actually you need that time out for yourselves, and everybody does, everybody needs that time out, but you don't want to be, here in your normal surroundings, but at the same time, you don't have any friends or family who are, can come with you, then, there are companies out there like Sanaa Khan who's there to help you, assist you, take you out of your shell, give you that confidence booster and so on. So do look up Sanaa. Sanaa, our time actually expired about a minute or 2 minutes ago, but my producers kept it going.
Okay.
So I appreciate his time and yours. I just want to say thank you very much, Sanaa. What you are doing, please keep it up. If the times get tough, I'm sure I don't need to tell you this. Remember who you are doing it for. And if, things evolve into something else, then I'm pretty sure you'll be able to give back in a different way. But on behalf of all the women out there, hats off and thank you. So to all our listeners and all our viewers, this is Breaking Stereotypes on Ramadan FM with our very, very jaw-dropping, inspirational guest, Sanaa Khan. Thank you very much, everyone.